over Nintendo's illustrious history, they've always tended to create games that people of all ages can enjoy, meaning that they're almost always on the easier side when it comes to difficulty. That's why when there's a hard moment in one of their titles, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and at times can actually lead to a frustrating experience. Being very fascinated with this topic led me into wanting to create today's video about the hardest level in every Nintendo franchise. Of course, not every game has conventional levels, so I will take some liberties and will try to showcase something comparable. Oh yeah, and by the way, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell button if you want to stay notified when I upload new videos. Of course, Mario is the very first Nintendo franchise we're gonna look at, who really is the company's mascot, where his home console debut came on the NES in 1985. Quite honestly, there are many titles in this series that have hard levels that deserve to be showcased in this video, but you might be surprised to learn that that honor will go to the Impossible Pack, which consists of 3 levels released as DLC in New Super Mario Bros. 2 for the 3DS. This was almost intentionally made difficult, mainly due to fans complaining about how easy the base game is. These levels will absolutely destroy you, starting with a swimming section where you need to dodge some very angry spiny Cheep Cheeps and one very angry Porcupuffer. After this, you need to navigate a pinwheel through midair, having to avoid the crowburs that are flying towards you or the bob-ombs that are falling out of the pipes above you. Believe it or not, this is actually the easiest of the 3 parts, where the next is an incredibly tough platforming area where you have to wall jump between rotating blocks while avoiding the insane amount of fire bars. This actually took me many tries to complete, where I must have died hundreds of times before I reached the level's end. The final section isn't as hard, but still gave me tons of trouble, as it all revolves around having to avoid the rising poison while seeking shelter in some ingenious ways. These levels were definitely unexpected, and although short, is some of the most frustrating content ever made. Trust me when I say that A Long Journey's End or Champions Road definitely could have taken the spot, it's just that I died way more times during the Impossible Pack than anywhere else. The next franchise in the company's history is Metroid, that debuted on the NES in 1986, where many people picked that original title as the hardest in the series due to its rudimentary controls, lack of a minimap, and tough areas. One of the toughest from this title is actually the very first of the game, as you're only given 30 health, have no power-ups, and really have no idea where to go. That was one thing that always frustrated me about the original game, being that you don't really know what exactly you have to do, which is really exemplified in the starting area. As a young kid, first playing the ported version of this game on the Game Boy Advance, I died dozens of times right off the bat, as I really could never get a proper handle on the controls, as they are nowhere near as polished as in future installments. Next up, we're going to look at my all-time favorite franchise, The Legend of Zelda, where there are 2 specific areas that instantly come to mind as the hardest in the series. The first should be obvious to those who've played the N64 version of the Ocarina of Time, which is home to one of the hardest areas in any Zelda title, the Water Temple. What makes this specific dungeon in this specific version of the game so hard is that you need to constantly put on and remove your iron boots, meaning that you have to pause, select, then unpause the game several times. This, coupled with the fact that you move incredibly slow with the boots equipped, makes things extremely tedious during those underwater sections, especially because many of the access points to progress are hidden, so finding them will take even longer. This was at least fixed a bit in the 3DS version of the game, when they added quick selection item buttons on the system's touchscreen, but the level itself is still grueling due to its slow pace. However, without a doubt, almost everyone online says that the Great Palace in Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link for the NES, is the hardest level in the entire franchise. This is the final stage of this particularly hard title, as it's full of tough enemies, and takes an insane amount of patience to progress while defeating them without taking any damage. Even if you manage to make it to the end of this stage, you still have to face off against the Thunderbird and Shadow Link bosses, that just so happen to be the strongest in the entire game. The next franchise we're going to look at is Donkey Kong, which technically came out in the arcades in the early 1980s, but it wasn't until 1994 where he made his home console debut on the SNES. There quite honestly could have been several stages that could have made this list, from the Rocket Barrel ones in DK Country Returns, the arcade game you need to complete in Donkey Kong 64, or the Brambles levels in Donkey Kong Country 2. But the actual toughest I'm gonna go with is the Snow Barrel Blast level from the original Country title. Why this level beats out every other one in the series has to do with a combination of having to traverse on the icy platforms and your skillful use of the barrel cannons that now rotate 360 degrees instead of landing on a fixed position. This led to many instances of death throughout several of my playthroughs, as there really is no second chance if you miss a barrel. Of course, there is a very simple shortcut if you know its existence, but I'm trying to approach these videos as if you've never played these levels before, which makes this one definitely one of the hardest. The Fire Emblem franchise is the next one we're going to look at in this video, where picking the hardest level is nearly impossible, as at times the gameplay in this series is a very individual experience, depending on the difficulty setting, your party members, and just overall how smart you are in understanding the mechanics of the game. That being said, I've seen a lot of people online say that the Fire Emblem, the Blazing Blades chapter called Battle Before Dawn is extremely difficult. One of the main reasons behind this is that it contains a fog of war, meaning that you can't see what's going on outside of your little bubble on the map. On top of that, you have to recruit Nino and have her talk to Jafar, while also ensuring they stay alive the entire time. This is a lot harder than it sounds, as these two characters can easily die, but do have a failsafe when they get to low health by using an elixir, but from time to time they move into a terrible spot when they use it, sometimes being targeted by enemies. I remember thinking this level was extremely unfair when I was younger, and I don't think a single person I knew beat it without a guide. Up next is Wario's wacky franchise, that started in the 2D platforming genre, and now has transitioned fully into the series that produces fast-paced minigames. The hardest level by far is Wario Land 2's Steal the Syrup's Treasure, aka the really final chapter, which is actually a hidden chapter only accessible after you collect the 50 hidden treasures, complete the picture panel, and unlock each of the 5 endings of the game. That alone should be enough to put any level near the top of the difficulty charts. Not to add that it was actually intentionally made hard to clear with insane platforming sections, tough enemies, and a final boss battle against the giant Spearman. This is actually considerably harder than the previous face-off against this foe, as he's now walking on a platform that you can't traverse on, meaning that you have to use some skill to defeat him. I do hope that one day, Nintendo creates another Wario platforming game, as they're usually full of wacky fun like this level. In all honesty, there isn't much difficulty at all to be found in the Yoshi series, but there is one hard level in Super Mario World 2's Yoshi's Island called Kamek's Revenge. This level starts off with you having to traverse across log platforms floating in mid-air while Kamek tries to swoop down and knock Mario off Yoshi's back. This can easily happen, especially as there's also green glove enemies that are throwing a constant barrage of eggs at you, which is another way that you can be hurt. The second part of this level has Yoshi transforming into a ski version, where you then have to go full speed down a hill while skillfully platforming and dodging Kamek's swoop attacks. It's extremely easy to fail during this section, as there's a few gaps you need to jump over, where if you make one small mistake, you'll fall to your death. The final part of this level ditches the skis and has Yoshi transforming into his helicopter version, where he once again has to dodge Kamek while moving towards the finish line. There really isn't anything else like this extra level in the franchise, and it would be interesting if Nintendo flipped the script and all of a sudden released an extremely hard Yoshi game in the series. Up next in this video is the Pokemon franchise, which doesn't really have distinguishable levels, so instead I'm going to focus on an area in the original Generation 1 games called the Rock Cave. Now, I only chose to highlight the specific area, as when I was a young kid I didn't realize you needed the HM flash to light up the cave and make your way through easily. Of course, as a 6-year-old with no real access to the internet and parents who wouldn't buy me the game's guide, I had to figure everything out all by myself. And I remember deciding to just trudge through the darkness, which gave me tons of trouble and anxiety. Okay, I am sure there's a much harder moment somewhere across the vast amount of titles. I just remember being the most frustrated during this specific one. Although the next franchise we're going to look at, Luigi's Mansion, only has 3 games in total in the series, there is one tough level in the third entry's Basement 2, which is the very bottom floor of that title's hotel. Here, you traverse through the building's sewers, having to solve a series of Luigi-based puzzles while navigating through the treacherous, dank waters below. I died several dozen times for some reason during this specific section, as there are shark ghosts in the water, spiked obstacles waiting to sink you, and mines that want to blow you up, which is made more difficult due to it being hard to maneuver in the floaty. On top of that, at the very end of it all, you have to face off against arguably the hardest boss in the series, Clem, needing to skillfully dodge his attacks, then send him flying against the spike wall, leaving him vulnerable. As an older gamer, I rarely get stuck through my playthroughs, but in this specific fight for some reason, I never could quite get a hand of controlling the ducky inflatable. The next franchise we're going to look at in this video is Pikmin, where almost everyone online says that the Hole of Heroes is the hardest level in the series, which appears in the second installment's perplexing pool area. What makes this so difficult is that the dungeon contains 15 sub-levels and repeats mini encounters with bosses from previous moments in the game, meaning that you'll have to bring at least 20 Pikmin of each type to complete it. It's really the boss fight moments that can leave you in disarray, and honestly, you'll have to redo this challenge several times, properly learning how to make it through each sub-level, losing the least amount of Pikmin you can. The first Nintendo multiplayer franchise I want to talk about is Mario Kart, where almost every fan will agree that the Wii version's Rainbow Road is the hardest in the entire series. This is mainly due to the fact that this course has several areas where there are no guardrails, meaning that it's easier than ever to fall off into the void below, greatly slowing you down. Even as a skill driver that's played this series for years, it's very easy to fail, as there are so many twists and turns in the track, and ways of being stopped by opponents, leading to a frustrating experience. This took me dozens of tries to finally complete on 150cc, and definitely attributes to me being a much more skilled player to this day. The last franchise we're going to look at in this video is Nintendo's ensemble fighting one, Super Smash Bros., where I'm only going to briefly mention one tough stage that I always hated playing growing up because it was too difficult, in Brinstar Depths from Super Smash Bros. Melee. What makes this stage a pain and almost impossible to play on is that it's constantly turning, meaning that there are different platforms and places to fight depending on its resting spot. Although the stage itself didn't really work, as there was a very limited area that you could fight on, making certain characters with much easier recoveries a must to use, or you'll almost definitely fall off to your death a few times. I was about to give the distinction to the N64 Brinstar stage, as it has a very annoying rising and lowering lava mechanic. That is, until I remembered all the frustrating matches I played on this monstrosity. Alright, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course, subscribe to my channel. Also, I do now have an Instagram, so go give it a follow at Copycat Gamer. There I upload some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.